My name's Finn, and I'm here to deliver the second instalment of Cycling Cities UK. It's Cheltenham this time, a large town in Gloucestershire in the southwest. You'll probably know it for its horse racing, but a far more interesting fact is that I was born here. I'll try not to let that influence me too much as I rank Cheltenham's cycle infrastructure based on the 6 sacred criteria: cycle lane coverage, cycle lane quality, flatness, road friendliness, amenities, and local opinion. 40 points are up for grabs, along with a place on the tier list. Let's get going. If you arrive by train to Cheltenham with your bike, and you're headed for town, then you'll be quickly greeted by the Honeyborn Line. This is a disused railway track, which has since been repurposed as a shared space path. It's nice and wide, with a smooth surface, and the trees that line it provide a nice backdrop for your journey. It also feels completely sheltered from any cars, and it snakes under and over many of the town's busiest roads, which is just lovely. This seems like a simply fantastic start to the town's infrastructure, but a few problems are quickly revealed. It looks like the signposting needs refreshing in places, and I'll bet it gets far too crowded at peak times for cycling at any useful speed. Even on the quiet weekday afternoon that I was there, I found myself slowing down, often for pedestrians. What's worse is that it doesn't take you all the way to town. Instead, it spits you out onto a network of busy central roads. As you cycle your way around Cheltenham's inner main roads, it's immediately evident that cycling is barely an afterthought. I didn't see a single decent cycle path, just a couple of lonely painted bicycles here and there. The worst offenders are a couple of one-way streets where bicycles are allowed both ways, but with little or no signposting, so drivers don't expect you to be there at all. It can result in some hairy moments. The bustle of the centre doesn't help either. If you want to cycle into Cheltenham, it can feel a bit like a game of man versus car, and we all know who wins that. It's nothing terrifying, but it no doubt discourages cycling, and it's disappointing when compared to some of the fantastic paths in other areas of the town.
Roads like the surface of the bloody moon.
The most brilliant examples of cycle infrastructure in Cheltenham are the paths which accompany the A40 in the west and the A435 in the north.
Now this is just fantastic, exactly what I'd like to see.
The second of these is a newcomer for the town, and a very welcome one by Shire reckoning. There's tons to like about it. Fresh, smooth tarmac with an alluring green paint carries you for over a kilometre past Pitfall Park and towards the racecourse. It's wide enough for a cycle lane in each direction, separated from pedestrians too, and is peppered with good signposts and friendly road crossings. It's a sight to behold for any red-blooded cyclist, and it's a similar story along the A40. Let's take a ride along it from the western edge of the town towards the centre.
This bike path down the A40 could do with freshening up along here. Lots of rough bits.
As you can see, it provides a great stretch of car-free cycling, although the surface quickly deteriorates towards the centre. The other problem is that it just sort of stops roughly half a kilometre before the centre, and the same is true of the A435 path. This leaves you with a frustrating choice. Cycle on the main road, push your bike the last bit, or lock it up and walk. While there is a nice choice of bike parking, it's not ideal. The Princess Elizabeth Way has a path running along it too, although it's a bit worse in every way. The surface is really rough in a lot of areas, and it only has one lane for both directions. I reckon Lizzie would be rolling in her grave if she saw this mess. That said, it is of course better than riding on the road, and if your bike has suspension, it'll be more palatable. It also links onto the A40 path, making a very lengthy, albeit very indirect, car-free route. So far, everything I've discussed has been in the north or west of the town. That's because, unfortunately, there's very little to talk about in the east and south. In fact, this whole area is almost a total black hole for cycle infrastructure. Save for a few scraps, like this puzzling 200-metre gravel path I found, you'll be sharing with the big scary metal boxes. That's right, cars, which can crush your frail cyclist body in mere seconds. These lovely painted bicycles don't do too much to help. Most of the roads in this area aren't too scary, so you might say it's not a big deal, but it definitely isn't enticing to new cyclists. This is especially true if you consider a potential ride into town. For someone living up towards Prestbury, the obvious route would be to simply follow Prestbury Road, as there are no signposts at all for alternative bike-friendly routes. As you can see, it's a bit of a slog down a not very wide road with plenty of cars passing. Not fun.
Okay, and finally, you see a bike lane. It's been a while.
While I was exploring the desolate reaches of Cheltenham, I ran into local cyclist Kevin and asked him for a chat.
Okay, I'm here with Kevin. He's from Cheltenham. I think at the minute we're on the north side of Cheltenham, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so would you say Cheltenham has a lot of bike paths and infrastructure that works well together?
I think it depends where you live.
Yeah.
So for me to get into the center of town, the one big bike path is through a park, but it's very hard to actually get in and out of the park. So the cycling infrastructure is not actually connected well with the road infrastructure.
Okay.
And when you're actually joining these bike paths, you don't have priority, and so it's quite hard to do.
Yeah.
They have built more cycling infrastructure connecting neighbouring towns or neighbouring like villages to Cheltenham.
Yeah.
But there is no real cycling infrastructure in the centre of town.
No, yeah, I noticed
But
that.
there is cycling infrastructure joining these small towns together, but not actually to the places
Yeah.
you want to be.
Well, you
at
mean the small
end.
different areas of Cheltenham?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I cycled along, I think I was going north or south past Pittville Park.
Yes,
And there was a really, really nice
exactly.
bike path going all the way along there.
And they're going to build it straight to Bishop's Cleeve.
Okay.
But then going actually to the centre of town, it's not that nice.
No.
No.
Okay, so what, patchy but really good in
Exactly.
places?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the problem. There's also a lot of painted cycle maps or placebo cycle paths
Yeah.
in Cheltenham, and I don't rate it at all. And
Yeah,
I
I was on one of those in the centre earlier, going
Yeah.
opposite one way, and it felt like no one was really expecting me to be there. Okay,
No.
is there an example of like a best bit and a worst bit of cycle infrastructure?
So I enjoy going through all the parks to
Yeah.
the town centre, but it's because I know the routes and it's like easy to do, but it's still not fast, and it still feels like it was once a pedestrian path and they
Yeah.
just put paint on it, and it's not really thought out. Like what's the best flow kind of thing. I don't live in an area where they have built in massive cycle lanes. Maybe in those areas I would say that would be an amazing
Yeah,
answer.
no specific.
I
terrible
wouldn't
bit
say.
Okay.
I don't know. For me it's just entering. There's a few bits where the road, you want to turn right, but the road also bends to the left. You have to decide when to be in the right-hand lane.
Yeah.
How soon do you have to be in that lane?
Oh, I see. Yeah. How
And-
much traffic do you want to hold up?
Exactly. And I find that decision quite hard because you don't want to hold up traffic, but if you
leave it
don't
too
go, leave it too late,
Yeah.
you're just going to crash, or you're just not going to be able to
Yeah.
go in that lane. Yeah, I think stuff like that makes cycling quite unenjoyable for me.
Okay, so one final question.
Yeah.
If you had to rate Cheltenham's cycle infrastructure out of 5,
Out of
what would you give it?
5. Oh, that's
you can
hard.
go for a 0.5 if you like.
Yeah. So the problem is, I feel, for me personally, I feel safe enough that I would say it's probably a 3 or 4, maybe. But if I actually compare it to what it needs to be, I
Yeah.
would say it's actually a 1 or 2.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So yeah, with the out of 5 scale,
Yeah.
if we're doing it relative to a realistic optimum, a realistic ideal,
I would say 1 or 2.
1 or 2. Okay,
Yeah. Or maybe a 1.
a 1.
Because the problem is, like, you can have very good cycle lanes here and
Yeah.
there. If your first 500 meters or last 500 meters is bad, what's the point? Or like, not what's the point, but
Yeah.
it's like, it's
Well, it's people are going to be put off by the weakest link.
exactly. Doesn't mean you shouldn't build cycling infrastructure, but
Yeah.
it's like, we can't expect you just put in one road and people to start cycling. It needs to be a big system. So I'm very happy with what they're doing now.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to take a while until you see people who don't cycle start cycling.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so a 1 or 1.5.
1.5 to 2.
1.5.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Nice place to sum up.
Off camera, Kevin told me he was studying for a PhD in astronomy, which possibly explains his highly analytical nature. I thought he made some excellent points, however he did concentrate on the negatives, so here's a positive. If for some reason you had to cycle from Cheltenham to Gloucester, you might be thinking you're in for a little bit of a nightmare. However, the B063 could come to your rescue. It doesn't sound like much, but it offers over 5k stretching all the way with uninterrupted, high-quality, segregated bike path. Just take a look at it. Thanks, Past Finn. He's right, of course. This is a banging bit of infrastructure, and it makes this route seem very much commutable. While it doesn't do anything to fix the more central issues that the town has, it's a properly usable feature, and I imagine it wouldn't look out of place even in the Netherlands, which is rare in Old Blighty. A nasty surprise that Cheltenham hides up its quaint sleeve is an occasional nerve-wracking road. The worst example I found was here, heading northwest on the A4019. Essentially, it's a 40-mile-an-hour dual carriageway with lots of traffic, and it feels completely unavoidable on bike. Google Maps sent me down here without hesitation, which I thought must have been an error, but I looked at the map afterwards and there really aren't any easy alternatives for the way I was going. Fortunately, as you get to this behemoth of a roundabout, there are friendlier cycle options. Unfortunately, these options are poorly signposted shared spaces on pavements, and after you navigate the roundabout in a couple of directions, it quickly dumps you back onto the A road. Charming. The final thing to mention is Cheltenham's collection of parks. Many of them technically count as cycle infrastructure, as bikes are allowed through them. But with most of them, such as Sandford, Hatherley and Springfields Park, they aren't connected in any smart way to other paths. They exist as islands of cramped shared space, where your cycling experience will basically be getting in the way of people. The one exception to this is Pittville Park, which links with our new mate, the A435 path, and the Honeyborn Line, which, as you'll remember, heads right to the choo-choo station. This makes a good few possible kilometres of car-free cycling. However, Pittville Park is often thronging with tweedy punters, and its windy, narrow paths really don't make for great cycling.
You definitely have to go slower around here. It's quite narrow and there's lots of pedestrians, but it is a park, so that's expected. And well, this isn't even peak time.
If you saw the first instalment, you know what's next. It's time to score up the second location of Cycling Cities UK and find it a place on my still quite barren tier list. First up is cycle lane coverage, which is a bit of a funny one with Cheltenham. Although there are a couple of fairly long car-free stretches, they really don't go anywhere useful. Instead, they skirt around the centre and often fail to link up with each other. Even worse is the southeast of the town, where there is no proper coverage at all. Sorry Chelters, it's a 3.5 out of 10. The quality of cycle infrastructure is variable too. There are some memorable highlights, looking at you B4063, but equally some absolute shockers. Again, particularly in the centre and the east. It's a 5 out of 10 from me. I'm going to give Cheltenham a 4 out of 5 for its topographic pleasantries. Even though it sits right by the Cotswolds, the vast majority of it is very navigable for the everyday cyclist. It's only when you head to the far east that you might find a steep hill. Many of the roads you'll be forced to cycle on here are small and residential. However, as you saw, there are a couple of nasty surprises waiting for the unsuspecting cyclist, and the central main roads are inhospitable and riddled with potholes. Therefore, I'll have to give 2 points of a possible 5. A gigantic positive for cyclists here comes in the form of good amenities. There are a plethora of cycle stores. I count 9, nicely spread through the town, making roughly 13,000 people per shop. Nice. There's a great spread of parking too, although there is a lack of a city hire scheme and public service stations. That's 3.5 well-deserved points out of 5. Kevin gave Cheltenham a 1.5 out of 5. It would be easy for me to say this was a bit harsh, but really I think he made some very fair points about patchy connectivity and a lack of segregated bike lanes. I loved chatting with him, and here at Cycling Cities UK, local cyclists know best. Thanks, Kevin. That makes a grand total of 19.5 points, slapping this place right into the middle of C tier. It's a town of contrasting elements. I was wowed at times and completely revolted at others, so I think ending up as very average makes sense. Certainly an interesting visit, and it was good to look around my hometown again. It's been a while. Next time, I'm going further afield, to a whole nother country, if you can believe that. See you in 2 weeks.
Nice one. La 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 la.